Okay, so welcome to the second episode of the White Shark Interest Group podcast. A massive shout out to all our listeners. We've had a fantastic response to the first episode, and this is now our second. Back once again today. We have myself, Ricardo Lacombe, one of the admins. We've also got our founder, Dirk Schmidt, with us.
Hey, hi everybody.
And we've got fellow admin Javier Rios with us.
What's going on, fellows and ladies?
Fellows and ladies. Okay, so we've had some requests we put out there for topics for discussion, and we had some fantastic questions and topics suggested by Chris Neto, who's one of our very active members on the group. Andrew Curry, the person with the longest member name ever, and I'm going to get this wrong, Rebecca Stover-Nikes Fuller. Sorry if I got that wrong, Rebecca. Clark Fullerton, again, a very active member of the group. So big shout outs to you guys for getting involved and suggesting topics there. We were going to talk a little bit today about conservation. Most people tend to find their way to a group like ours, the White Shark Interest Group, for conservation reasons, or you've seen things about sharks, you want to know more, you want to get involved, educate yourself, and a lot of it does come down to conservation. But one of the questions that frequently gets asked, and I used to ask this myself, and I wanted to put it out to you guys, a lot of people ask how you can get involved in white shark conservation and conservation for sharks in general when you don't actually live near sharks. You don't live next to the ocean, you're not out there, you're not in the field, you're not in marine biology. How can you get involved, do you think, in conservation efforts?
That's a good question, Ricardo. I hear that often as well. People would like to get involved. How do we get involved? What can we do? If you speak out for sharks, you're making more and more people aware of sharks and changing public perception, educating people with knowledge and images and stories, where people start realizing that sharks are actually not all that bad. I mean, my mother being an ideal case in this, for her, a good shark was a dead shark. I battled with her mindset about it for many years. And ultimately she realized and say, you know what, you've dived with these sharks, you've swum with these sharks, they've been around you and they haven't eaten you. And I said, yep, they haven't eaten me. So she started to actually change her perception to it. And I just believe that the power of change lies in education and knowledge. And well-informed individuals can make a difference. By influencing those around them and around us, really together we can affect a change that conserves this species and other shark species.
So how do you see the conservation that you might do, say, online? I mean, you can sit there all day clicking on, campaigns and petitions. How do you think that kind of education and awareness actually then can directly follow on to actual conservation and saving the animals?
Well, there's many ways. I mean, sure, you can do petitions, which are always great. I mean, we're always looking for people to support certain petitions, especially against finning and protecting certain species. But overall, it's more the communication, the spreading the word. I mean, we have the power of social media at our fingertips nowadays. Through this power, we also have the power to influence, to affect opinion, to change behavior, to change opinions, to change misguided perceptions. Conservation is not just about physically what we are doing for a physical shark, like taking the nets out, being on the water and so forth. There's so much more that we can do behind the scenes in terms of actually driving education, posting or sharing information that we are sure of is factual, and supporting, research conversations and interacting and engaging.
I agree with that. It starts with every individual. People are hard to convince sometimes because obviously they only see what they hear, or they clickbait, or one subject and one line, and they go with that. They don't read the whole report because you think that people are going to actually read appendix from a research paper that some people will. I know some people will, but not the normal person might not, because it's a lot of complicated words, scientific words that I don't even understand sometimes.
This happened recently, last couple of days. I saw a post on the group about the shark that's pinged again, the famous case of Catherine the shark. Yeah.
Good. Correct.
So Catherine, all these headlines, all they said, and even like Apple News and everyone was reporting this great white shark named Catherine re-emerges after disappearing a year ago. Wow, amazing. It's got a picture of a white shark. But actually, when you go and read the detail, thanks to our lovely friends over at Allsearch and their PR machine, it actually doesn't say that she's re-emerged at all.
No.
They purely were just saying on speculation of last data, if she was still there, which I do hope she is, where she would be now, where she would ping. Yet the headline was that Catherine's pinged and re-emerged after a year. And it totally, absolutely, the article said nothing of the sort. But that headline is all people caught onto,
And that is a problem, that if you're not take the time to really read the article, you're not gonna get the right information, and then you're gonna go with it, and that's how fake news things blow out of proportion, and that's a detriment to the white shark that which are we talking now. Again, going back to, you got to be responsible to read the information and look for the information. Don't be afraid to ask about it, because you're not supposed to know everything. None of us, even the biggest expert, doesn't know everything. That's why they keep research, they keep looking for information. But to protect sharks, if you don't start with facts, the simple facts, you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of the scientific information. You'll be going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. So I think when new members tend to join our group, you do see this, some people have this great passion for sharks, and they're instantly saying, what can I do? How can I get involved? And I think, Dirk, you always said this, start at home, start locally. I mean, especially places like Europe, where we have places still selling fin soup and selling shark products. I even saw it, and this is where it kind of blows my mind, is to bring it close to home. I know people who, I saw a picture of them, and they've got a set of shark teeth, some shark jaws on their bookcase behind them in a picture.
Right.
And I started just quizzing, is that real? Is that a real one? And the more I dug and asked the question, not only was it real, but it really wasn't from a reputable source. Where they actually bought it and where they went, where the country they were in at the time, clearly it was detrimental to sharks. They got a piece of jewelry essentially now, a piece of something for the bookcase to look cool. And these are people who I considered fairly well educated with a lot of common sense, but haven't stopped to think, hang on a second, me going in and buying this shark product, or me, searching online, I want white shark teeth, who don't stop and think and ask those questions. And I still find that quite striking. But I mean, is that a place you can start with that kind of level of education, maybe?
I think it is, Ricardo, because we all got to start somewhere. I mean, even the most ignorant person, and I'll say it with all due respect, is, saying that a great shark, and this is, actually my mother, she was ignorant about what sharks actually do in the oceans, and why we need to conserve them. And I said back in 2011 is that you cannot conserve a species you do not understand, and that's really fundamental. You have to understand something about sharks in general, and especially the white shark being an apex predator. Why it reproduces so slowly? Why is it only found in certain areas of the world? Why is it not more commonly spread around? And understand the fundamentals about, and I alluded to some of that in my book. The power of change lies in education and knowledge. Only well-informed individuals can make a difference by influencing those around them. And then obviously together we can affect to change the conservation of the species. And it's a process. There's nothing going to happen overnight. Sure, people would go into these tourism shops somewhere on some island and they see a whole bunch of shark jaws and they think oh gee, look, they're cool. They'll bring them home, and it's an enthusiasm that they have. Sure, they are supporting an industry that's obviously not sustainable, but in the same sense, they have an awareness of sharks. Bringing those jaws home hopefully will actually spur them on to learn more about sharks, and then when they actually get onto pages like ours, they actually realize, like, wow, I'm actually supporting an industry that is not sustainable, B, it's not in the best interest of the of the biodiversity for our oceans. So it's a process. I mean, we all started somewhere along the line. I mean, when we saw a lot of people saw jaws for the first time. Sharks weren't really a big issue then. I mean, sure, they were around, and divers complained about them, and Powerhead shot, killed a few, and it was like a big hero thing. It only became jaws really changed in terms of brought sharks into your living room, and it became a topic of conversation. Firstly, maligned, monstrous, bloodthirsty killers, and so forth. And we're obviously still fighting those headlines. It actually started bringing sharks into the living room as a point of conversation. And I think I'm gladly to say that we have evolved into a much more positive light of sharks now, to say, that, geez, Jaws was a great movie to make you aware, and it's still an iconic movie. But if you actually look at what Jaws, the whole series 1, 2, and 3, and you look at how far from reality that is now, and we brought that about by education, by bringing programs along like Shark Week. The mere fact that Shark Week is so popular tells you something. Yeah. And I'm delighted to say that sharks are now, like, literally people look forward to something about sharks for the whole year. Yes. Sure, some of these programs are still like, teeth and blood, and it's like danger and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of these shows are starting to morph into a more conservation educatory tone versus just showing teeth and the thrashing tails and blood and gore and everything. So I'm really delighted to see that as we progress, sharks are becoming much more of a topic that is actually now used as a token for conservation and why we need them, and spurring the whole fight against finning and starting up shark conservation areas and marine conservation areas.
But I think both yourself and Javier both said in the first episode, Javier, you mentioned about an organization like OCEARCH, for instance, bringing shark awareness to the fore is a fantastic step. And Dirk, you've just kind of said that same with Shark Week, and I think you're both far better men and conservationists than me, because I still struggle a lot with not getting angry at Shark Week and those kind of outlets.
I get angry. I get frustrated.
Yeah.
But I gotta separate the objective with the subjective. So I have my opinions, which I make them clear in many occasions. Like I said, I can't be a hypocrite. Yeah, Shark Week has his flaws, and a lot of flaws. But so many people that I know, that they haven't joined my page because they're not that much into, I mean, they like sharks, but they're not that much like some of us are. But every time that they know me, so they know that when Shark Week's coming, they go, "Are you ready, Javier?" They put it on my wall, or they send me "Hey, Shark Week is coming." Though to me, it's a positive, because yes, maybe 70% of the programming is BS, in my opinion, because you could find educational in everything if you look for it. But in the general sense, most of it is kind of like whatever, man. You get frustrated, and I understand your frustration, Ricardo, because I get it too.
Well, I guess the frustration is twofold, because one, it's an industry I work in, so I kind of see what they're doing. Yes. And I have to try and work to separate what is basically just essentially like reality TV formatting to what I'm actually have an interest in, which is sharks and shark conservation. And then the other frustration is that huge platform, millions of people. Imagine if you actually could get those real messages across in that week. If you have that size of an audience and you could get that message out, I also then wonder, do people want to hear that message? Is the fact that the great white shark is an endangered species that we must protect, and and why, as you talk about, Dirk, why the impact on it with fishing them or purposely killing them, how they just cannot reproduce quick enough to keep up with what humans are doing to them? Do people want to hear it? Are they there just to literally sit back with a beer and watch some sharks jumping out of the water?
You know what? I'd rather have somebody sitting back with a beer watching sharks jump out of the water. At least they have an interest in the sharks. And the messages that do come through will, I believe, chip away at the subconscious about, what if they weren't there anymore? I'm not going to see sharks jumping out of the water anymore. And that's what channels like Nat Geo and Discovery channels, or Smithsonian, sure, they're popular, but Shark Week is just like, wow, it brings the buzz about, and it's exciting, and what's new and so forth. So people look forward to those kind of shows, sure, because some sensationalism in it, and I'm pretty sure the producers are trying to balance it off in terms of, because I have written to them numerous times and saying, like, please provide a balanced view of sharks, but not just the exciting parts, in which is sure attracts your crowds, and the headlines are sometimes atrocious. If I read some of the headlines of these shows, and I just like shudder to watch, but then the actual content is actually not bad, but the headline just sucks.
Yeah.
I suppose it's the same in the UK with some of the newspapers there as well. It's like you just want to say, like, really,
Every year, every summer, the trash tabloid magazines will always start bringing up that some fisherman in Cornwall has just seen a great white shark and they're on our shores. Last year, though, there was an ever so slight little difference, even in the trash tabloid mags. The language they were using was a little bit more toned down than usual. It did give me a little bit of hope there that some fishermen in Cornwall have seen a shark and they think it's a white shark, and then it actually went on and discussed about what kind of water temperatures white sharks might need and what their food sources are. It's like, wow, this wouldn't have happened, like you said, in the Jaws era, and it was a slight change away from the whole, killer shark attack. Killer sharks are attacking England
Right, and I think that's where it's going to trend towards. I mean, they in all consciousness, as people become more and more educated, especially about sharks, and this is again where education is such an important part of being able to spread informed and qualified knowledge. They know that part of the audience knows better than to believe their trash headlines, and they can't be that ignorant that people aren't becoming educated about sharks more and more, and that headlines just like that just don't stand up anymore.
Yeah.
Even with Shark Week and things like that, you see the tide turning, that people are getting smarter about knowing that most of it is not really educational. It is more about getting somebody to watch by the title. I love watching jumping sharks out of the water. That's impressive, no matter how are you gonna put it. Does it get repetitive? Yeah, of course. But I don't have that much of a problem with that. Is it helping conservation? No. Is it helping put people in the right direction to see what the white shark really needs? Somebody that isn't in the business working directly with them, like me, that I don't. But somebody that is not gonna be close to the ocean. Let's put one title that I always found interesting: Serial Killer White Shark.
I knew you were going to say that one.
But let me tell you how my mind has evolved in recognizing the title versus the subject within the show, which is from a very respected, and I respect a lot, Mr. Rod Collier. But if you look at the title and then you look at the programming, it's not about that the shark is looking to murder one victim and then going for the next one. It's more about the way that these scientists are doing, like the carbon with the tooth and doing all the research like an FBI profiler would.
Right.
Forget about the whole title for a second and look at some of the subject within the show, and you'll get it.
Interestingly, this is a genuine true story, and I'm not going to mention any names here. But I was in South Africa filming. In the same guest house was a production crew who were shooting for Discovery, shooting for Shark Week that year. And they were just getting, at that time, this is quite obviously they're shooting, a year plus in advance of the shows for like next year. They actually just got through at the time the rundown of the titles for that year, for later that year, including shows that they've worked on. And they were actually genuinely finding it hilarious. They were reading through the titles and just absolutely howling with laughter. Now, these are guys who work on these shows, and these are genuine good people, These are genuine people who would have an interest in conservation and they also want to put a roof over their head and pay their bills, which is why they're working, But they were genuinely laughing at the titles. And I know from seeing them work, who were extremely professional, and the quality of what they're filming, in terms of the technical skills, is absolutely fantastic, superb. But even they were laughing at themselves in terms of those corny titles they put out. So, yeah, it's interesting that you have to get past that to get to the content.
In some shows, though, but the bloodthirsty, or and it's only about shark attacks. I like to know how many shark attacks has been in the world throughout the year. But I don't need to be dramatized with actors going to the Bahamas and in honeymoon, and the girl went out in the water and never came back. That's ridiculous. I know it's a true story.
Well, the recreations that they do, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, really?
So I'm one thing I'm curious about, a question for both of you actually in two parts. Well, firstly, Dirk, you talked about your mum's opinion is only good sharks are dead shark. I'm assuming is that from South Africa? Yeah.
Well, she was in Germany, and I grew up my first couple of years in Germany, and then migrated to South Africa. But yeah, she had that opinion, and she had a very staunch opinion about it, and. When I started writing my books, she thought I was crazy. How can you do this? And even once I published my book, she still had this attitude. And then as I, kept on working on her opinion about it started to change. And I showed her pictures from underwater, with great whites, and she just couldn't believe that, I still had all my limbs. So.
Right.
So she was quite amazed. She says, like, you're crazy doing this, and you're my son, and I just want to look after you. I said, yeah, but But
Yeah, she was probably just worried about you, you
but
know?
I need to tell her as well that it's we need to protect these animals, because I just remember as a kid when we went back to Germany to go and visit, was that we ate shark. It was like a smoked shark fillet in a way, and they smoked it, and it was like a more Nordic tradition, and it was really tasteful. Now, I mean,
Hmm.
thankfully, that industry is completely stopped. With people being more and more aware of sharks and shark meat and so forth. I mean, I'm not saying it's not being farmed or fished commercially anymore, but that whole industry has actually disappeared, and they had other industries obviously as well linked to whale blubber and so forth in the old days, that some kind of a oil that they gave to kids to drink for their bones or something. All these practices have changed, and I believe these practices have changed not only because, again, we threatened these species literally to extinction, but also through education, that we found alternatives, that we found alternative ways of actually having the same type of protein or type of food in the same chemical that we require. But yeah, just coming back to my mom, it took a while to educate her, but again, it was facts, it was knowledge, it was information, it was factual information about what really happened and how these interactions happened. Now she actually she says, "Oh no, look at the headline." And I'm quite proud of how she actually says, and she's like 84, and she says, like, look at these headlines, they're completely wrong. They describe these sharks as monsters, and that for me is like, if I can convince an 84-year-old that to read out newspaper clippings to me that and then point out how factually incorrect she believes them to be. Again, that's just the power of education, the power of knowledge that can take somebody who was an ardent two sharks to be able to wipe them out, versus that she understands that we need them, and we understand that they are very part of our ocean. But just before that, even the early books from Jacques Cousteau and Hans Hess and all these explorers, they were always very respectful and very cautious of sharks in the early days as well. But as they progressed as well, they got used to working with them, and they got used to them being around, and they also did not see them as these bloodthirsty killers. I believe that we set the foundations of our current knowledge and our knowledge base on these explorers very early on, that had such a great impact on so many of us.
You mentioned like Jaws, because I mean, obviously we usually talk about Jaws quite a lot on the group and things, but Jaws, you stopped at number 3 though, Dirk. You said, "Oh, terrible films like Jaws 1, 2, and 3." You want to talk about number 4? Number 4, right? So Michael Caine's in number 4. I don't know if you
Yes, I
remember
do
this.
actually.
So it's like it's the descendants of the original shark now know who the Brody family is, and then follow them down to the
Yeah,
Caribbean.
Come on now.
right.
But
Yeah.
but people still contact me and they're like, "Oh, Ricardo, shark guy. Look, Jaws 4's on channel so and so." I'm like, "You really
Yeah.
think I want to watch Jaws 4?" Actually, it's a guilty pleasure sometimes, do.
And for the most concerning one, is what was Michael Caine thinking?
Yeah.
Hey, I'll tell you what Michael Caine was thinking. I saw a fantastic interview with him. Somebody said to him, they're interviewing him about some award he was getting and some masterclass he was doing on acting. And they said, "Why do you make films like Jaws 4? Have you seen Jaws 4?" And he said, "Actually, I haven't seen Jaws 4, but I've seen the house that I bought for my mother with the money from Jaws
Yeah.
There
4.
you go.
He was very, very straightforward. He did it for the paycheck, but it's absolutely horrendous. People still say to me, though, "Oh, I know you're into sharks. Quick, Jaws 4's on Channel 5. It's like, no, thanks, I'm okay. I wanted to ask you, Javier, that I heard there about like Dirk's mum and that opinion changing, which is a fantastic story. Now, where you live, because you live in Florida,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
Miami.
So where you live in Florida, I just wonder, you're right on the ocean. I know there's a lot of fishing
fortunately.
there. Do you think culturally, what's the sort of attitude towards sharks and conservation in an area like that compared to, say, I live in a village in the middle of the north of England where no one goes near the ocean? Do you think there's a cultural difference or a locational difference depending where you live on
Yeah,
conservation?
definitely. It depends where you live in Florida. Even though we all use the water for swimming, surfing, fishing, diving, snorkeling, honestly, here people have a very good understanding about that sharks are there. That's why you don't see nets or drum lines. Obviously, there's no white shark, but there's big sharks. Like I said, there's tiger shark, there's bull sharks. I feel proud about that. I love my state. There's a lot of things that are laughable about the state, but one thing I really love is that people respect the water. Unfortunately, great whites don't come that close to shore here, unless you go to the Keys. Sometimes you see them going through the Gulf or from the Gulf. People see them diving, but or you see them if you go out fishing. You see a great white, but it's very rare. It's not a that's common. Where the way they swim from the Atlantic, they stay off the ridge. I mean, unfortunately, the fishing part, and we have a couple of fishermen that we know this the Martyr Shark, obviously. This guy that
Yeah.
takes famous people out to catch big sharks. They get huge hammerheads and tiger sharks and big sharks. And that's a constant battle with people like that. People that fish shark to eat, which I don't like. I see the majority of people do respect that the sharks are there and they're constantly aware that they're always there. And if they don't know and they're with me, I'm gonna tell them. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and sometimes they're gonna be so close to you, and you could see that when you see those helicopter shots that you see the ocean and you see all the shark, the people swimming, and then you see a shark like 10 feet away, right? And then you see the people like screaming and whatever, That's unfortunately that's a normal reaction from people. They're gonna start screaming. Unfortunately, that's just nature. It's good to see that people are they have a pretty good relationship with the ocean here, and when it comes to respecting it, I think that because it's not always been like that. Now, if you go to a little north near Smyrna Beach, where people surf, people go in the water knowing exactly that somebody's gonna get beat by a shark every year.
Yeah, because you were saying this on the last episode, weren't you? You were saying that in like some of the things, there's people, 6, 7 bites every day. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it happens. It could happen. It could have happened throughout the whole coast. In the where the surfing and it's gonna happen, and people know it, and they still, even people coming from out of town, all right, they come to surf,
Yeah.
and they go, "Oh, I got bitten, but I'll be back. I'll be back." That's not gonna kill me. I know. It's
See, that's crazy because if that was a white shark, even a little nick on the foot, that would still be a front page
Yeah.
headline in most areas.
what they do give the news. They put it in the news, but most of the time, it's not as sensationalized.
The big change in perception is that, from people are starting to classify it a shark bite versus a shark attack. If you're being attacked, I can, believe me, if a shark attacks something, you'll see the purpose in it, versus just a bite and let go, and either you were cramping in a space, or you threatened it, or it felt threatened, you didn't see it, or things like that. But there's I think the shift in media and therefore the shift in people's perception lies in a lot in just changing one word from attack to bite has made a huge difference.
Or incident. I see that used a lot more
Yeah.
now. There's been a shark incident.
Correct. We have to thank social media as much as a double-edged sword, and there's a lot of bad things with social media. We gotta thank again technology, modern being in a modern world, evolving into technology. You see that the reason people have changed their perception about a bite versus an attack.
I've seen it in the group.
Exactly.
I've seen a thread started in the group, and people have had that conversation, and they've come out with a different attitude.
Correct, and we have to thank the way that the access people have to get perspectives from a bunch of different people around the world, not just from one location in the United States, a little corner in Florida. It's the whole world. Is in Facebook, it's Twitter.
I think there is a lot of value in social media. Yes, it gets a bad rap, but it is a very powerful. It's a tool. I think one of the things that in the White Shark Interest Group, I noticed we now, if you're not a member of the group, by the way, and you're listening to this on, wherever you're listening to it, Apple, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you are, if you want to join the group over at Facebook, just search the White Shark Interest Group. As you do, one of the things that we do for member requests is ask a question. We always say, why do you want to join the White Shark Interest Group? Some people will just
like sharks.
put, I love sharks. And then some people will write you a whole paragraph about shark conservation.
Yeah, me too. I love it.
I love that.
And what I always do when I see those, what I always do is I always jot the name down and just see if they then start posting and getting involved, because that's the kind of, yes, if you're there because you love sharks, you want to see the pictures, fantastic. But clearly some people come into a group like that with so much passion already. And I think that spreads once those people get into the groups and start posting that. I think that's kind of infectious, that sort of attitude of, I want to learn more, I need to know more, I want to protect sharks. But I think one of the social media is a fantastic place. We always say the media needs to represent sharks better. I genuinely think within your own families and friends, like you've highlighted fantastically there, Dirk, with your mother, when people do send me that message, Ricardo, check out Joel Sports on Channel 5, I often do stop and take the time to tell them why I think it's crap. There's a good reason for it. And I think it, in a sense, it does need to start there. Is challenge your friends, challenge your family who might have these perceptions of sharks, and of course their eyes will glaze over after a while when you realise you've been telling them for half an hour about why it's crap. But,
Then there's one more thing that I'd like to just bring up on this podcast as well, in terms of actually the change of perception, knowledge, and education, is the advent of drones. As you see more and more of these of this footage, you can very clearly see the shark has absolutely no interest in the human. I think whilst drones are great in terms of showing us that fear factor in terms of initially is like, oh, look how close the shark was to somebody. It could have attacked them. It could have savaged them, and all the kind of junk that you normally read about. People are starting to realize this shark's got no interest. B is going. It's obviously hunting some fish, or it's just in an area patrolling its area there looking for food. It's very, very clear from this footage that as we're not on their food chain, we're not part of their food chain. They don't recognize us as being a food source. As we see more of this drone footage, it brings that message home more and more, and it's really great to see. And before, we never saw that, so we always thought we were alone in the water. We're swimming around back line, and we're doing breaststroke and backs, and backflips and, whatever we want to do in the water. We never realized that the sharks were actually so close to us at all times. Now with drones, we're realizing that, and guess what? Nothing's changed. We can co-inhabit the same water space. A shark's not going to go out there and hunt you. If it did, we would see far more attacks than we see now, or we see in the past as well. I mean, a shark attack is still a very rare incident, and I just believe this drone footage has, to a large extent, shown that sharks are not really interested in us. And I thought, that is something just to add in terms of, why it's so important about knowledge and these shark groups that we have, is to show that kind of footage as well, for people to realize that what, next time I'm in the water, it's a great possibility that a shark could be in the water with me. And guess what? I'm going to survive this, survive this incident.
Well, surfers have been realizing this for a long, long, long time. You're right. I love the drone footage for so many reasons. I mean, I'm a drone photographer myself, but I love drone footage. Think of the difference of that top-down angle, which in one sense, yes, you can see how close it is. Now, imagine if that camera came down to water level, and all you see is a guy on a surfboard, and in the background, you see the fin coming out of the water. That's the image that we've had for decades now. Yeah. Whereas, from a drone, you see, I guess it gives you it takes you out of that situation a little bit, yeah?
I've got a question for you, Ricardo. What got you involved in shark conservation and being so passionate about them now?
Oh, well, fear initially. I grew up terrified of sharks. And I grew up in Canada. First movie I ever saw was Jaws. When I remember images of that from when I was about 4 or 5. From the earliest memories, just from Jaws, I always remember sharks. I've always had an interest. I've always found them, fascinating creatures to watch. And I didn't used to watch a lot of shows like Shark Week. I used to read a lot of books and look at a lot of photography. And I think around sort of late 80s, early 90s, I actually started getting involved in some of the personalities behind sort of sharks. So the first one I ever remember looking into was Ron and Valerie Taylor, who obviously did a lot of the work on Jaws, and that was like a lead-in to start looking at who are these people who go out and study the sharks and oceans. And And then I kind of just didn't think about that much for several years until it was actually my wife Rachel, and we'd been on a couple of sort of vacations together. We just had a year where we said, okay, there was no kids at this point, and it was like, okay, what should we do? And we kind of both instantly said, let's go shark cage diving. It's just one of those bucket list things. You think that, wow, what will that be like? Face your fears. I had a horrendous fear of open water, even like a river. I'm terrified to be on it. So the idea of I'm going to get out on this little boat and I'm going to go out to a place where I know I'm going to see white sharks in False Bay, absolutely terrified me. It's terrifying. So, but we thought, let's do it. Let's do it. We went out on a charter, and we got out. Oh, I'll tell you actually, just before we got out, our first trip out was booked on a Wednesday. So on the Monday, we were sort of prepping ourselves. We're having a nice day around Simon's Town, around the Cape area, looking at the wildlife and so on, and kind of getting ourselves mentally prepared for this horrendous fear. We're going to go out and see these sharks. It's going to be terrifying. And then when we got back to the guest house on the Monday, someone at the guest house called and said, oh, by the way, the shark charter company's just called, just checking you're ready for your dive tomorrow. And I'm like, tomorrow? It's Wednesday. They're like, no, it's tomorrow. Check back with them. And it's like, oh my goodness, we've not got ourselves ready for this mentally. We're going to be terrified. So 5:30 the next morning, we're down on the jetty in Simon's Town. We're actually going to get on a boat and go and see sharks, and we're still terrified. Got on the boat, headed out to Seal Island. It's like, this was so surreal. The sun was just coming up over the mountains. It was beautiful place. But what are we doing? We're going to go see great white sharks. Are we crazy? And then we saw some in the distance. I think we saw a few things happening, splashes maybe. But Rob pulled the boat up. I'll never forget this moment. I was stood on top of the boat, and then I just saw the belly, the underside of a white shark, and it was probably about a 4-meter female, just rising up from real deep. Just saw this white shape, and it gradually just coming up, so slow, so graceful. And I'm stood on top of this boat. The fear's gone literally within a second. And I always say to this: if you are fortunate enough to be able to go out and actually see white sharks, it will change your life forever and change your perception of that animal forever. About 5-10 seconds of this shark slowly rising up it's like straight up with its belly facing us, glaring white with the sun hitting it, was just the most surreal moment. And I knew from 10 seconds of what the hell am I doing out on a boat with sharks around me, to I turned to my wife and we both said, let's get suited up. I want to go in that cage. I want to see these guys up close. And from there, I started, looking on Facebook, looking on social media, as Javier's already said, very powerful tool, and just got involved. And then I used to join in discussions in the White Shark Interest Group. And then somebody said, we need an admin. And Here I am.
Yeah. And we're really grateful as well. So you've done excellent work for us. Thank you so much.
We have to be glad to have
and
you.
a real shout out to you and your wife. And but then, what made you do White Shark Legend? Was that during your initial fear as well, or was it by that? But were you a convert by then?
I wasn't I wasn't a convert. The Great White Shark Legend, which again, shameless plug if anybody wants to see that, it's on Amazon. So because we'd been out there as tourists and seen these white sharks and known literally within seconds that everything we'd seen about white sharks was a misrepresentation.
Yeah.
It was that stuck with me. That held with me. That was a real powerful emotion. I've been lied to. This isn't the truth. They're not like they're portrayed. So I came home and I had some footage and home video footage and put a little piece together. And I was sending it to Rob and Carl Lawrence at their business and saying, hey, if you want to use this footage for your business, you can. Just shot it for fun. And I did a couple of commissions, doing a couple of like promotional videos for those guys. And then as we were doing that, we just got to thinking, myself and my wife, that story of this is not how sharks are, this is not how a white shark is, that people have been fed for decades. No one's telling that story. No one's putting that story out there. And can you actually even capture in a documentary or a film, can you capture that feeling of seeing a white shark in person, not through cheesy music, the same clip overplayed, the recreations, all the kind of stuff that you see on Discovery Channel, which they're very good at what they do. I cannot discredit them for that. I just wanted to do something very different. And then I just got talking to Rob and Cara about, do you think we could actually do this? I got some money together, I got GoPro involved and had some backing. And it's like, the story we wanted to tell is, what is it then like living with a white shark on your doorstep? Because nobody's telling that story. Everybody has these perceptions through the media, or they will join groups like ours and they will see things, but still do not grasp that idea of what's it actually like to see a white shark. And I think we got a little close to that with the film, but that was the whole driver for it, Dirk, was just I want to tell that story of the media has lied to me, as honestly as possible.
And it really comes out across very nicely, very well as well. It's well presented, and you've got some interesting people talking about sharks as well, and it's just brings back so many memories of the whole crusade to actually change perceptions, and I'm really grateful for all the work that you've done out there, Ricardo.
Well, you were a big part of that, Dirk, because when we interviewed you, obviously I didn't know you at all before then. I'd seen the other groups and I'd seen some of your photography, but I didn't know you. And then Rob obviously said you really need to speak to Dirk. His photography is amazing, and check him out. And really, to be honest, we sat probably for about 2 hours with you for an interview. And I genuinely would say the insights from people like yourself, or some of the surfers, or some of the the other people in that area, that those conversations genuinely did convert me. I was making a film, I was making a documentary. I didn't know where that was going to go, but it was actually talking to people like yourselves that actually just opened my eyes. And I love that now, because this happens every day. On our group on Facebook, on the White Shark Interest Group, someone will come along and you kind of see them coming in very green, very naive and wanting to learn. And it's just like, let's open the doors and share these experiences with you, which is what I hope we're doing here as well with this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I think we're in the right time in life about that. There was always a question: is white shark really super in danger now that they're almost out? So it's good to know that for what the numbers say and by people observations, and it's kind of they have rebound back, and that's good to see. I mean, I don't have all the facts in front of me, but for what I read and remember for people telling me, the numbers are better. So in some areas better than others, obviously, but it's good to see, because that means that people are caring more for these creatures than they did before. Going back full circle to social media, is that thanks to getting people interested just one bit about this species has turned it around, in my opinion, because now how many people go shark caging just to go, or just South Africa to see white shark jump, or Australia or California to Guadalupe, or the Farallon. I mean, it's just that you see the turnaround little by little. You see that it's turning positively towards sharks, and especially the white shark. And you got to thank people putting the interest enough to click on a page, White Shark Interest Group. Oh, you know what? Let me get going there, or let me go to in any other page for that is interested in white sharks.
Yeah.
Of course, ours is the best.
Well, you might as well stick with the biggest and the best, eh?
but you could check the other ones too. I mean,
absolutely no. And share this stuff around. I found this is super, super important. And again, we're not making money from this. This isn't for our sort of benefit. But absolutely, if you're listening to this podcast right now, whether it's audio or you're on YouTube watching it, just please share it around, because it's not just our group, but it's that message to pass around that genuinely can help with conservation. So that question, what can I do? What can I do? Spread the truth about white sharks and the education you know about them, and have those discussions. Dirk, I was just running, because we're probably should be wrapping up around now. Just on a final note, to come back to that initial thing, if somebody lands on the group and says to you, Dirk, I don't live near the ocean, what can I do to aid shark conservation? What would your advice be?
Well, as we say in the White Shark Interest Group, as actually part of our logo is actually, it says educate, conserve, protect, and it starts with education. You cannot conserve or protect a species you don't understand, and the more you can educate yourself about sharks as a species in general, and obviously great white sharks being a more iconic species that is maybe easier to talk to and easier to fall in love with as well, because the lesser sharks are lesser known. Through education, we can conserve, because we speak out for sharks and making people more aware of practices that are obviously harming sharks and harming the biodiversity of our oceans. And through conservation, we can then protect. So to everybody who says, please engage in the group, engage in discussions, There are no silly or stupid questions out there. We are happy to educate and help educate people all the time. And through that, you can become shark ambassadors and shark conservationists, being part of it and speaking out for sharks. And ultimately, what we're achieving is the protection of sharks.
Very well said.
Perfectly said. So, we're going to wrap it up there, guys. Just to let you know, if you are listening to this and you're not a member of the White Shark Interest Group, you can join now. Head over to Facebook and search the White Shark Interest Group. We're also have our website, which is thewhitesharkinterestgroup.com. You can check us out on Instagram, which is whiteshark_interest group, where it's not just the photography. We like to try and put a bit of the facts and education behind the images that you see. And we're also on YouTube. If you search the White Shark Interest Group on YouTube, where you may already be watching this podcast. So we're everywhere. Share it around, click the like buttons, hit the subscribe buttons, do all of those social media goodness things that can share some truth about great white sharks and conservation. So big thanks to Dirk today, and big thanks to Javier.
Cheers.
Thank you, Ricardo.
We will see you on the next episode.